Hey, it's Cersei, and today I wanted to talk about burnout, how we can avoid burnout, and more importantly, how we can set ourselves up for success when working towards goals, whether that be by ourselves or with others. So, my first question was, why do a lot of current practices lead to burnout? Feelings of dissatisfaction, and overall, a lack of care and trust in an organization. What I'm going to talk about is going to sound counterintuitive, especially for those who have been in cultures focused on primarily efficiency for a long time. And it's not going to be easy to do to start off with. But I truly believe if you take the time to listen and take the time to experiment with it, you will see the benefits. I'm going to start with a group example, one that I'm sure a majority of people have experienced in some form or another, that of corporate culture. When a new project or task is started, it begins by being planned out, absolutely necessary, allows you to see what each of the components are, how the tasks will be divided, etc. There's nothing wrong with planning. It is a crucial step. But when we look at how that planning occurs, we can start to see where issues can arise. When you are assigned one of the tasks and you are asked to give a rough estimate on how long it will take, not even when you are just told a deadline, regardless of the actual time you think. More often than not, you give an estimate accounting for the actual hours of work that it will take to accomplish. And let's say in this example, you say 2 weeks. How long is then put into the plan for you to accomplish that task? 2 weeks. It's what you said it was going to take, so why wouldn't they just put in 2 weeks? Let's take a moment, though, to consider what wasn't taken into account when you said those 2 weeks of work. Did you take into consideration that during those 2 weeks you'll be pulled away for other work? There may be more pressing matters. There may be a coworker who needs your assistance with a task. Maybe you lose a day or two total in those 2 weeks to working on things that come up for which the plan did not account. Now, how about for the time that is lost due to other aspects of your life? You become stressed one night, you lose sleep, and you just don't have the same energy the next day, and getting things done becomes difficult. You go from an 80% efficiency to a 50% efficiency. How about for the time you spend recharging your energy stores and building relationships within the company? By spending time at the water cooler, making a coffee, talking about life, building real relations with those you work with, building trust and respect between each other. How about for the time lost due to stress as the deadline approaches and all of this other time that pushed your estimate out further than expected comes to the forefront? Where you feel frazzled and unable to focus, you're worried if you'll be able to even meet the deadline. All of this affects your ability and affects your efficiency. Now, you may very well be able to complete the task in 2 weeks. There's always examples. Look at any story about crunch, and they get things done in that time. But I'm sure with all of these other things and that time crunch hitting towards the end, it took a lot of energy, and you can start to feel worn out. You may have entered into those 2 weeks with 100% energy, 100% efficiency, but now in the best case, let's say you're down to only 95%. Not much, barely noticeable, skipping over the real life cases where the energy drain is much worse, where you're after that time you're down to 50% or you feel like you're at 20% or at zero. Now, you may not recognize that you're feeling drained, or you may not want to acknowledge that you're feeling drained, especially in an environment that is prioritizing efficiency and getting things done. So when the next planning meeting comes around, you're going to set the same deadline for a similar task. And if you're already starting lower on energy, all of these problems are just going to compound. You become more stressed, you lose more sleep, you become less productive, you worry you're falling behind more, you stress more. That causes issues in other areas of your life. You no longer feel you have time to go to the gym, go for a walk. Those things that relax you, you feel behind, and you are going to continue the cycle of burnout. You may be able to go for a long while, especially at just a 5% reduction. You can maybe go for many months, but it will get worse and worse as time goes on, and you start with lower and lower energy. But following this system, there will reach a point where you don't meet a deadline, and things will cascade from there. You can feel stuck, stressed, unable to move forward, and feel this sense of failure regularly. And that is hard on a person. Failures are not meant to be everyday experiences. They're meant to be points to learn from. But when that is all you get to experience, how can you ever know if changes you're making are working? Nothing you do will feel worthwhile. Let's go back a bit now and imagine a different scenario from this, where you complete the task ahead of schedule. The stars align and nothing interferes, and you manage to complete things ahead of schedule. Or maybe, you know what, it actually just took less time than you thought. If we take the common workplace mentality of maximizing efficiency, you'll be met with a few things in response. The first will be to immediately give you more work to do. It's amazing you got more work than expected done, so now let's be efficient and you can start working on more things. Second of all, next time planning comes around and a task is similar, your deadline's no longer going to be 2 weeks. You now may only have 10 days since you've shown that's all you need to complete the task. Which may be the case, but only under an ideal scenario. So now you need to work harder. You need to find more time than you have. You will once again end up in this cycle of burnout. You will not set yourself up for success in the long run. Now, when you do start burning out, and you know if you do things faster, there's absolutely no benefit, you're going to begin to optimize around your own personal benefit, since the company isn't. So you'll start saying the maximum amount of time possible. You know you can get away with saying 3 weeks. You're going to say 3 weeks. And you are going to make sure that you use up all of that time. Whether that be through meetings, conversations, unimportant work, etc. Then if a company is becoming adversarial and they begin to micromanage you, you'll begin to get creative and find ways to appear busy while actually just trying to have some time to recover some energy. And I don't know about you, but in that environment, I would begin to hate my work and anything associated with it, making it even harder to want to put in the effort to complete it. How then can this be remedied? And that's where I'm going to talk about the 50% rule, where given a time estimate that's accounting for the hours of work done, assume that the time needed is 50% more than that. Or if you like thinking about the other way, where given a time frame, you will only complete 66% of the task in that given time frame. So in this example of 2 weeks, it works out nicely to 3 weeks. And while 50% isn't going to be an exact time to be added, it's a rough number to work around, and in this case, it works out nicely to just add another week. Now, I know it's going through your head, especially those who have been in this environment or lead this kind of environment. How are you going to get anything done? Everything is going to take 1.5 times longer to complete. This kind of plan may sit weirdly in your gut. You can be unsure of the effectualness of this plan. However, when we make our estimate, we are accounting for the committed work hours. But when we add these hours on top, this extra 50%, It's taking into account that we are human, that we have many aspects of our lives that affect one another. Our home life affects our work life, will affect our hobby life, which can affect any other part of your life, and they are all intermingled. Everyone impacts another. What else does this time account for? And perhaps this should be the biggest takeaway for anyone in a position to implement this kind of system. This is the time where connections are built between people. This is the time that allows trust, honesty, and respect to be built within and around the company. It gives time for people to get to know one another, not just the work, what motivates one another, what are people's strengths and weaknesses. It lets them build care for one another. So when one person has a tough week, everybody isn't just looking out for themselves. You have a whole bunch of people who are going to step up for that person. This time is not spent inefficiently. It simply accounts for the fact that we are human, that we have an energy reservoir that takes time to recover, that we have a hard time estimating how the rest of our life will impact things. And it also recognizes that we are more than just our skill sets. We are more than just our work. And when given that opportunity, we will show that as well. And more often than not, people want to contribute to a common goal, especially when it's with people we have grown to care about. I can imagine the concerns of how this can be taken advantage of and how people will look to dawdle up until the new time allotted. I ask, though, why is there such a lack of trust? What led to this lack of trust? Do you not trust yourself that you would not take advantage of that? And if so, why would you take advantage of this system? Trust is a huge factor in all of this, and it's a whole topic I'll discuss in another video. But where I believe trust is built is through clear, honest, and concise boundaries and expectations. Is it wrong to set an expectation that someone communicates progress at certain points and will communicate anything that has come up that they believe might cause deadlines to go astray? Is it wrong to set an expectation that if boundaries are being crossed, that actions will be put in place, where if there is an issue with time management, someone will be there to help you with it? Would these not empower trust or build trust between people? Trust is a two-way street, but I believe it has to start from the one with the perceived power in a situation. They need to be the ones most trusting. People who feel they have less power will already feel potentially threatened, worried about trusting something new that has power over them. I believe, though, that when given to those who have less power, the ones you'll want to have around will give that trust right back. And the ones who abuse that trust, they'll make themselves known quickly and they'll make their decisions clear. And having clear consequences for crossing well-defined boundaries is just as reasonable. It all goes towards building trust. I think back to one of my fondest memories of trust and respect from the workplace when I was working maintenance at a golf course of all places. And one guy and myself would always be given the physically intensive tasks, digging holes, fixing sod. And on this day, we were asked to clear out a dam that was causing some big water problems. We needed our hip waders, we needed pickaxes, we were up to our waists in the water. We had water fill our hip waders. We nearly got pulled under once we got the water flowing as our feet were stuck in the mud. It was a hell of a time. We were trusted with this task. We had to go walking into the forest. There was no supervision, no one to verify where the dam was, no one to see if we were working or messing around. And this was when I was 19 or 20, when we definitely did have our fun here and there. However, we got the job done. And we got it done early. We loaded up and headed back to see what was next on our list. Now, we had no clue of how long we were expected to take, but it seemed like our boss figured it would at least take us the day. And so, out of respect for us and the work we had done, he just told us to go appear busy for the rest of the day. But otherwise, there was nothing pressing on our list for us to do. We felt respected, we felt trusted, we felt truly appreciated and cared about. And you know how us two 19, 20-year-olds responded? We had a few places to lay down some new sod, so we spent a little bit of time to get some of those done. We were still tired and we needed to recharge a little bit, and we had found a great place to do some axe throwing deep in the forest. So we did end up doing that, but we still wanted to show our appreciation back to our boss by getting some additional work done. And we respected the boundary of it, where if we were going to goof off for a bit, we would be well out of sight of any members at this golf course, which we made sure to respect. Now, let's apply this to an office workplace, where let's say you finish your work early, whether that be a day or an afternoon, and if your manager or boss responded by saying, hey, take it easy for the rest of the day. There's some minor things here and there you can look at if you want, but that'll be all for today. All I ask is that you are available for any client emails or messages from coworkers who need some assistance. How would that make you feel? And how would you respond when this is the norm? For myself personally, I know I would probably look at some neat project for work that we wouldn't have time for otherwise. That would be a unique way to add value. And I believe this is the case for most people, where if they are enveloped in that type of environment, they would also look to give back to the company and the people that respected them and their work. This mentality and methodology also allows people to succeed and exceed expectations. When we have this mentality of we need to approach 100% efficiency, it becomes impossible to meet expectations. All it would take is one thing to go wrong, and all of a sudden, you haven't met your goal. And when you continue to fail meeting your goals over and over again, it weighs on you mentally. It can break you down, and eventually you may reach a point where you no longer want to try to meet expectations because you know you will fail. That just sucks. Any effort you invest into improving your capabilities, improving your performance, will always be met with failure. That effort will always feel wasted. And how long can you go putting in wasted effort before you need to stop? This is also something I believe you can apply to your internal self as well. I'm going to use myself an example where I want to lose some weight, about 25, 30 pounds altogether. I'm not too sure how long that would take, and that's a whole topic in goal planning and breaking things down into reasonable things. But in this case, I broke it down to where how long will it take to lose the first 5 pounds? I know how long that will take. I've lost those first 5 pounds many times. They just like to come back, apparently, and I know given perfect eating habits and exercise, about a week. They come off pretty quick. So what I'm going to do instead is give myself a week and a half to 2 weeks for those 5 pounds. Just by setting that timeline instead of 1 week, I can already feel this pressure coming off of my shoulders. Where I know I've been stressed with work lately and I may not get out every day for the exercise that I should. And given that timeline, I can be honest with myself about my current condition. If my body is feeling exhausted, I'm free to skip a day and read a book instead to recover some energy or go to bed at an earlier time. Then, also, when I end up meeting that goal after a week, I'm going to feel great about myself, and it's going to be so much easier to continue forward for the next 5 pounds. I'm also going to be setting myself up for success by leaving time for my humanness, where my mental state will be in a place where I could continue forward forever. I'm not going to reach a point of burnout. This is where, though, there can be issues and things to think about, where, and it makes it much more clear, where if I continue setting 10 days to 2 weeks as my timeline for 5 pounds, I may very well fail to meet that goal. And in this scenario, there can actually be something worthwhile learning from that. Instead of when all you're met with is failure, you don't know which of those actually matters. In this scenario, when I fail to meet my goal of losing 5 pounds, it gives me an opportunity to first off reflect on, are there things I can be doing better? As have I been setting myself up for failure where I am constantly losing energy? Those are things I may have to take into account. And now when I meet this failure, I'm able to properly recognize that. The second being where maybe things have changed and I'm even doing everything right. I'm only able to lose 1 pound a week. And that's okay. It's just the new reality. Be honest with yourself about, okay, these things have changed. I feel I'm doing things right. I've looked through different potential options, but this is the new norm. Like, you're going to reach that point eventually. And the last is to reflect on if there's information you're unfamiliar with. For me, it was the case that apparently we have short, medium, and long-term fat reserves, and the time it takes to deplete those reserves varies. And when you start losing weight, you're losing things out of the short-term fat reserves, and those are depleted pretty quickly. When you get to the long-term reserves later in weight loss, that effort is going to require more. There's going to be more effort required. And with that new information and being open to learning about it and adapting to that environment, we set ourselves up for success once again. We don't become frustrated with ourselves that things have changed and that we can't reach the same level. That's all right. And so, all in all, when talking about the 50% rule, just want you to remember that it takes into account our humanness. It reminds us that we are all human, and when we give estimates, we have difficulty accounting for all of the other aspects of our life that will impact our plans. So roughly take that into account with the 50% rule. Set yourself up for success. Be honest with yourself and those around you. Take time to understand yourself and build trust and respect with yourself and anyone you work with. Allow yourself to be able to succeed. I truly believe using this mentality, you'll end up in a better mental state. And more often than not, I believe you'll be able to meet your goals or deadlines much more regularly as well. Probably even ahead of schedule most of the time. And this will continue indefinitely. You're not setting yourself up for just a couple weeks. You're setting yourself up for life. So, with that, I want to thank you all for listening. I appreciate you all taking the time, and I truly hope I've been able to provide you with something beneficial to your life that you're able to apply. Other than that, though, have a great day. Bye.